Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really significant subject, the major trends that are reshaping the future of work.
It's a huge topic.
Definitely.
Yeah,
And you, as someone who likes to stay informed, you're probably seeing bits and pieces about this everywhere.
for sure. Headlines, articles, social media, it's a lot.
Exactly. So our goal today is to, cut through some of that noise. We want to pull out the really critical insights.
And we've got some solid sources to work with: McKinsey, the World Economic Forum, pilot program results, labor stats, surveys.
Right, good stuff. The mission here is to give you a clear, useful understanding of what these shifts actually mean for you, for your career, for the whole work landscape, going beyond the buzzwords.
Absolutely. So you might be thinking, what are the biggest changes? How will this affect my industry? What should I really be watching?
Those are the key questions. Let's dive in and see what the data tells us.
Sounds good. We're seeing several powerful forces converging,
Yeah.
really changing how, where, and maybe even why we work.
Wait.
Let's start with one that's, well, affected almost everyone recently: remote and hybrid work.
Right. The pandemic just blew the doors open on that one, didn't it? It kind of dismantled those old cultural and tech barriers almost overnight.
It really did, and the scale is striking. McKinsey suggests something like 25% of workers in advanced economies could stick with remote work long term, maybe 3 to 5 days a week.
Wow. And compared to before the pandemic,
It's like 4 or 5 times higher, a massive jump.
huge. And you see the appeal, right? Employees get more flexibility, maybe better work-life balance.
Definitely. And for companies, well, they suddenly have access to talent pools that aren't just local. They can hire from almost anywhere.
But there's also this pushback, isn't there? The whole return to office movement. I saw Axios reported that mostly on-site workers in the US doubled in 2024.
Yeah, it jumped from about 34% to 68%. That's a significant shift back. And you hear executives voicing concerns, often about productivity, maybe collaboration, company culture, when people aren't physically together.
So where does that leave us? Is it back to the old ways or?
Well, I mean, some jobs obviously have to be on-site: healthcare, manufacturing, lots of service roles.
Sure.
But the data and just the general direction suggests a full swing back is pretty unlikely for everyone. What seems more probable is finding an equilibrium, a hybrid model.
Balancing that flexibility people want with the need for some in-person time.
Exactly. Finding what works best, maybe varying by role, by team, by company. It's likely going to be more nuanced.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's pivot slightly. Another hot topic, the 4-day work week, and just more flexible schedules in general.
Yeah, this one's definitely gaining momentum. The idea of working fewer days, often for the same pay, is obviously attractive.
Well-
And we're seeing some pretty compelling results from pilot programs around the world. The World Economic Forum highlighted trials in the UK, Spain, other places.
And what did they find?
They often found that productivity was maintained, sometimes even improved, and employee morale generally higher.
That's interesting. I remember hearing about the Microsoft Japan trial. They saw like a 40% productivity jump.
That was a big headline, yeah. And that large UK pilot in 2022 with over 70 companies.
Mm-hmm.
Something like 92% of them chose to keep the 4-day week after the trial. They reported revenue increases, less absenteeism. Pretty strong indicators.
So what's driving that? Is it just the longer weekend?
It's partly that, sure, more time for rest, family, personal stuff, even education. But the data from the trials points strongly towards reduced burnout. Less stress, less fatigue reported by employees, which, naturally tends to boost job satisfaction and engagement.
Makes sense.
And the WF even mentions potential societal benefits. Less commuting means fewer emissions, for example.
Of course, it's not a perfect fit for every single job, right? Customer service, roles needing constant coverage.
True. Implementation has challenges, especially around scheduling and customer-facing roles. But the positive results are definitely making more companies consider it.
Yeah, something to watch. Okay, let's shift gears again. Automation and AI. This feels huge, transformative.
It really is. And it's moving way beyond just robots on assembly lines now.
Right. We're seeing AI creeping into, well, all sorts of routine tasks: inventory management, data processing.
Even writing code, generating reports. And McKinsey noted the pandemic actually sped this up. Companies were looking for efficiency, ways to handle demand fluctuations, maybe with fewer people on site.
So how widespread is this likely to become?
Well, projections are pretty bold. The World Economic Forum thinks nearly 3/4 of companies expect to adopt AI technologies by 2027.
Wow, 75%.
And with that comes expected workforce churn. Pinsent Mason's research suggests about half of employers think AI will create new jobs data analysis, AI programming, system maintenance.
Okay, so new roles emerge.
But about a quarter of employers also predict job displacement because of AI.
Right. And those McKinsey numbers about job transitions are pretty stark. 1 in 16 workers globally needing to potentially switch occupations by 2030. That's what, 100 million people?
Yeah, a massive number.
Yeah.
And it looks like middle and lower skill roles might be most impacted initially.
We see it already, don't we? Self-checkouts at the supermarket, customer
Yeah.
service chatbots.
Exactly. Those are everyday examples. So the upside is potential boosts in productivity, economic growth.
But the downside?
It's a huge need for reskilling and upskilling. People need to learn how to work with these systems. Plus, there are major ethical questions and the whole challenge of making sure the benefits are shared equitably.
That's a critical point. Which actually leads us nicely into another major trend, the focus on employee well-being and mental health.
Yes, this has really come to the forefront. It feels like less of a nice to have and more of a core business priority now.
Why the shift, do you think?
Well, employers are realizing that a supported, healthy workforce is just more productive and less likely to leave. Plus, the pandemic really dialed up the stress for everyone, didn't it?
Absolutely. Burnout became a huge buzzword, blurred lines between work and home.
Exactly. And the stats are concerning. That 2024 Westcom survey found 74% of employees reporting negative mental health impacts from work stress, anxiety.
That's nearly 3/4 of people. And employees are demanding better, aren't they? I saw a stat that 92% of U.S. workers really value when their employer pays attention to their emotional well-being.
They absolutely do. It's becoming a major factor in where people choose to work. And companies are responding, or at least trying to.
How so? What are they doing?
We're seeing things like expanded mental health benefits, better access to therapy, counseling, more flexible work options, remote work.
To ease commutes and stress.
Right. Wellness programs, mindfulness, fitness subsidies, encouraging PTO, even specific mental health days.
Yeah.
Training managers to spot burnout, trying to foster better work-life boundaries.
Although, on that last point, I think I saw that only maybe 40% of workers feel their employer really respects their time off.
Yeah, that suggests there's still a gap between policy and practice in many places. Room for improvement, definitely.
But the goal is clear. A more humane workplace, better engagement, less turnover, makes companies more attractive too.
Precisely. And this focus on the individual worker, their needs, their well-being, it connects directly to another big shift. Rising labor activism and changing expectations.
Yeah, this feels like a power dynamic shifting somehow. We had the Great Resignation a couple of years back.
Right, people leaving jobs in huge numbers.
And then quiet quitting, people basically doing the bare minimum, rejecting that hustle culture.
Both signals, really, that workers, especially younger ones, were looking for more than just a paycheck. They want respect, purpose, a voice.
And that's translating into action.
It seems so. Reuters reported 2023 saw the most strike activity in the U.S. in decades. 33 major stoppages.
Wow. In which sectors mainly?
Auto workers, entertainment, healthcare, often unionized groups fighting for better wages, benefits, conditions, and they often made significant gains.
And public opinion seems to be shifting too. Higher approval for unions.
Yeah, around 70% approval, the highest in many years. Seems like broader public support for worker interests is growing.
It's not just strikes either, is it? We're seeing new laws like pay transparency in California and New York.
Exactly, trying to push for more pay equity.
Yeah.
And there are ongoing debates, especially in Europe, about gig worker status and protections.
So the underlying message is,
Workers want more respect, purpose, a say in things, transparency, equity, and employers are under more pressure to listen and respond.
speaking of gig workers, let's talk about the rise of the gig economy and freelance work itself. That's fundamentally changed things too.
Oh, absolutely. A huge shift away from the traditional long-term job model towards gigs, contracts, freelancing, all enabled by digital platforms, of course.
And it's widespread now.
Very. Velocity Global estimated over a third of the U.S. workforce, like 59 million people, are doing freelance or gig work. And it's growing fast in Europe, too, projected to hit maybe 43 million there soon.
What's driving it from both sides?
For workers, it's often about flexibility, choosing when and where they work, being their own boss, maybe monetizing specific skills. For employers, it's labor flexibility, access to specialized talent just when they need it.
And it's not just low-skilled delivery jobs, right? It spans everything.
Everything from driving and delivery to high-end consulting, design, IT work, it's a massive spectrum.
But there's a trade-off.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Workers get autonomy but often face income instability. And they usually lack traditional benefits, health insurance, retirement plans, paid sick leave.
Which brings us back to those debates about protections.
Exactly. How do we provide a safety net for this growing part of the workforce? That's a major policy question, especially in places like the EU right now.
It's a complex picture, freedom versus security. Okay, so with all these changes, AI, gig work, shifting roles, the need for upskilling and continuous learning seems critical.
Absolutely paramount. It really underpins everything else. Technology and job requirements are changing so fast, you just have to keep learning to stay relevant.
And the projections there are pretty stark too, aren't they?
Yeah, the World Economic Forum figures about 44% of workers' core skills will be disrupted in the next 5 years or so. Almost half will need reskilling.
Wow, nearly half.
And McKinsey's estimate we mentioned earlier, up to 375 million people globally potentially needing to switch occupations or learn new skills by 2030.
So are companies stepping up? Are people getting the training they need?
We are seeing more investment. Companies are prioritizing upskilling more, putting budget towards things like coding boot camps, digital literacy courses, certifications. There are partnerships with universities.
Like the WEF's reskilling revolution, trying to tackle it globally.
Right. Large-scale initiatives are emerging. The potential is huge. If people get the right skills, they can fill those future jobs in AI, green energy, advanced healthcare.
But the risks
Is widening inequality. If access to retraining isn't fair and equitable, some people will get left behind. Lifelong learning has to become the norm, and everyone, individuals, companies, governments, needs to play a part.
A constant state of learning. Okay, one final major trend to cover. The increasing focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI.
Yes, another really important societal shift reflected in the workplace. A much bigger emphasis now on building diverse teams and tackling systemic inequities.
What's pushing this forward?
Several things. Social movements demanding more equality, a growing understanding that diversity is actually good for business. Different perspectives lead to better innovation, problem solving. Plus, just changing demographics.
And what does this look like in practice?
Companies implementing DEI programs, aiming for better representation across gender, race, ethnicity, LGBTQ+ status, disability, setting diversity goals, creating employee resource groups.
Like affinity groups.
Exactly. More transparency around things like pay equity. And we're seeing employees notice this. Pew Research found most U.S. workers say their employer has fairness policies, and over half have had DEI training.
Are there external pressures too? Regulations?
Sometimes. Things like mandatory gender pay gap reporting in some countries definitely play a role.
And the overall goal?
More equitable opportunities for everyone, especially those from historically underrepresented groups, and creating a workplace culture where everyone feels respected, like they belong.
How is this generally viewed by employees?
Generally positively, according to Pew. Especially younger workers. They increasingly expect employers to be genuinely committed to DEI. Though, like anything, there are debates about the best way to achieve these goals.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, it's clear the world of work is, well, in massive flux.
Absolutely. So many interconnected changes driven by tech, by worker expectations, by broader societal shifts. It's a lot to take in.
And for you listening, someone who wants to be informed, understanding these trends isn't just academic. These are the forces shaping your career right now and certainly in the future.
Right. These aren't abstract concepts. They have real-world implications for your job, your industry, your skill set.
Exactly. So maybe a final thought to leave you with as you process all this. Which of these big trends, remote work, AI, well-being, activism skills, DEI, do you think will hit your career or your industry the hardest in the next few years?
And maybe what's one proactive step you could think about taking now to navigate these changes effectively?
Definitely something to mull over. It's a fascinating and slightly daunting time to be thinking about work. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.